Welcome to Payback with Silas. Every day, a new story, lies, betrayal, payback. Let's begin.
You know that moment when people stop looking you in the eye during meetings? That's when you know you're already gone. It started slow, subtle. My name stopped showing up on the weekly planning docs. A junior analyst rewrote one of my security reports and slapped his name on it. I flagged it. No one cared. Then came the jokes. "Don't let Levi overthink it," someone would mutter. "He'll turn it into a 40-page protocol." Everyone laughed. I didn't. I'd written those 40-page protocols. They were why this company had never suffered a customs breach, a phishing attack, or even a single delayed audit in 7 years. But none of that mattered anymore. Because Silas Gentry had arrived. He was the new VP of Operations. Lean, loud shirt. A disruption junkie, as he proudly called himself. He came from some flashy startup that collapsed before their Series B. Somehow, that made him an expert in logistics. "The problem with this place," Silas said on his first day, standing in front of the entire team in our Portland, Oregon headquarters, "is that it's too damn careful. Careful is slow. Careful is weak. We need to start moving at the speed of now." He looked right at me when he said it. And I knew. See, my name's Levi Rourke. I'm not flashy. I don't wear tight pants or pitch ideas over lunch beers. What I do is build airtight security systems for international freight routes. From customs documentation to biometric gate control. I wrote the original digital freight clearance system for Risner Logistics when we were still operating out of a rented warehouse near Tacoma. And now, apparently, I was a dinosaur. 1 week after Silas's arrival, I was pulled into a realignment meeting with him and our CTO, Devin Cade, a man who once told me two-factor authentication was a vibe killer. Silas leaned back in his chair, arms behind his head like he was posing for a magazine shoot. "Levi," he said, "you're a smart guy. No one's denying that. But we've got to pivot. You over-engineer everything. These protocols," he tossed a binder onto the table with dramatic flair. "They're like locking a garden gate with a bank vault." I didn't flinch. "That's how you keep someone from stealing the garden." Devin smirked. Silas shook his head like a disappointed coach. "You're not wrong," he said. "But you're also not fast. And we need fast. This is a logistics company, not the NSA." Then came the final blow. "You're being released from your position. Effective immediately. No warning. No discussion. No chance to adjust." I stared at them both. Not angry. Not even surprised. Just tired. "I'll need to revoke your credentials," Devin added, barely looking up from his laptop. "Of course," I said. I handed over my keycards, access fobs, even the token generator I personally pushed to implement after a close call with a ransomware attempt 2 years ago. No drama. No argument. Because what neither of them seemed to realize was that I was the system. Every node. Every override. Every backdoor built for customs emergencies. Every alternate server routing line for high-priority cargo passing through South Texas. All of it was embedded with caution, logic, and traceability, written by me, tested by me, and never once documented by anyone else in full. They thought I was too careful. They were about to find out what happens when careful is gone. 3 days. That's all it took. I didn't expect a phone call. Not from Silas. Not from Devin. And definitely not from anyone in that building who'd laughed when I walked out carrying a box of personal belongings and 7 years of buried loyalty. But I got one anyway. On the third morning. 6:42 a.m. It was Melina, the shift coordinator from the East Coast terminal. Not corporate. Not management. Just someone who knew exactly how deep into the guts of the system I used to work. "Levi," she said, whispering like she was hiding under a desk. "We've got a code red on the Toronto freight line. No one can get past step 3 on the customs manifest upload. The system flags everything as unauthorized modification. I paused, still half asleep. That's the checksum lock. It's not a bug? What do you mean it's not a bug? It's designed to freeze manifests when someone tries to bypass protocol sequencing. Silence. Then a heavy sigh. They deleted half your protocol stack yesterday. Devin said it was too redundant. I almost laughed. Not out of amusement, but disbelief. Redundant? Those redundancies were layered protections. Fail-safes for when a port's system time drifts by a few milliseconds or a biometric skin doesn't match due to a swollen eye or cut finger. Real-world case. Things you plan for when you actually care about keeping cargo moving and secure. I hung up gently. I didn't owe them advice. Not anymore. By 10 a.m., I had 6 new missed calls. One was from a number I hadn't seen since our Singapore onboarding project in 2021. A guy named Raymond, mid-level, loyal, anxious by nature. He didn't leave a voicemail. He just texted. They're locked out of the Juarez terminal. Like locked out. Trucks piling up. Border agents are pissed. They don't know what to do. I remember staring at that text and just feeling calm. Not smug. Not vindicated. Just still. Like my instincts were finally louder than the noise around me. By noon, someone from corporate finally cracked and emailed me directly. Not Silas. Not Devin. It was Clark Ashford, the Chief Risk Officer. Subject line. Request for consultation, urgent assistance needed. He tried to mask the desperation in professional language, but I could see the fire behind the words. Their entire customs interface, what they'd once mocked as overkill, in an era of AI and automated everything, was crashing in on itself because they tried to rip out its spine. They thought I had overbuilt it. What they didn't understand is that I had woven it. Threaded logic through layers of international regulation, unpredictable port behavior, and human error. I didn't build a machine. I cultivated an immune system. One that was now rejecting its new host. But none of that was my problem anymore. At 2:13 p.m., I got a call I didn't expect. Silas. I let it ring twice. Then picked up. His voice, for once, wasn't loud. Hey, Levi, we've got a situation here. I heard. Listen, some of the transition didn't go as smoothly as we thought. Devin's trying to restore a backup, but the credentials aren't syncing with the clearance servers. That's because those backups require hardware-based reauthorization. 2-factor signatures tied to biometric keys. Silence. That key, I said slowly, was on my YubiKey, which I turned in. Right, so I guess what I'm saying is, we could use your help. I leaned back in my chair and looked out the window of my apartment. It was raining in Portland. Of course it was. You know what the last thing you said to me was, Silas? You said I was locking a garden gate with a bank vault. I heard him swallow hard. Well, guess what? The vault's locked. And your garden's wide open. I get it, man. I was wrong. I admit that. Please. We're hemorrhaging shipments. You'll figure it out, I said. After all, this isn't the NSA, right? And I hung up. No threats. No payback. No revenge. Just boundaries. That evening, I got dinner with someone from a private firm that specialized in customs clearance automation. One of those smaller, more agile companies who still believed that security was an asset, not a bottleneck. I told them I was open to opportunities. They didn't ask for a resume. Just a start date. I chose Monday. By Monday morning, Risner Logistics had become the cautionary tale they always believed they were too smart to become. I didn't even have to go looking for the news, people sent it to me. Old colleagues. Former partners. Even a Port Authority rep from Laredo I hadn't spoken to in years. Risner backlog snarls border trade, CEO issues internal review. New customs platform fails at key nodes, thousands of shipments delayed. System failure triggers audit request from U.S. Customs and Border Protection. I read every headline over my morning coffee. Calm. focused. I'd already started orientation with Selhurst Dynamics, a tight, focused tech company out of Chicago with clients in private aviation, bonded warehousing, and international freight. My kind of people, risk-minded and structure-hungry. But still, a part of me couldn't help watching Risner collapse in real time. Like watching a house of cards fall in the exact way you told everyone it would. What happened next didn't surprise me. But it still hit like a train. By Tuesday, I got a message from Natalie, one of the only people at Risner I still respected. Senior compliance officer. Smart, quiet, and never once laughed when the others mocked. Levi's triple-check checklist. Her message was short. They tried to override your internal signature cache. Whole system went into lockdown. Silas is blaming Devin. Devin's blaming you. Internal legal spinning. I almost replied. Almost. But I didn't. Because I already knew what was happening. See, when they deleted my redundancies, they didn't just unplug safety nets. They tripped failover protocols that were designed to prevent unauthorized reprogramming from within. It was a core integrity feature I implemented after an internal breach simulation in 2019 nearly allowed a fake customs agent to reroute high-value electronics into secondary holding without inspection. Devin had dismissed it as paranoia back then too. Funny how paranoia turns into foresight after the fallout. By Thursday, Risner's internal tech Slack leaked to a couple of industry journalists. A few screenshots ended up on Twitter. Lines like, "We can't reverse the encryption. Who signed this protocol? Why is the old engineer's biometric key still triggering null states? I told you not to delete the Rourke stacks." My favorite came from someone I didn't recognize. "How the hell did we fire the only guy who understood this system?" That one made me laugh out loud. At Selhurst, I was already neck-deep in designing a risk isolation framework for sensitive materials crossing through Tier 2 ports. Their CTO, a woman named Janelle Ward, treated security with actual respect. We had a long, quiet conversation on Wednesday about nested authentication layers and the human factor in cargo flow. "You sound like a guy who's built things under fire," she said. "I've built things," I replied. "They lit themselves on fire." Late Friday night, I finally got one last message. This time it was from Silas. It was long, sloppy, rambling, probably typed with whiskey breath and shaking hands. "Levi. Listen, man. I know I came in hot. I get it now. We made some bad calls. Devin's gone. Board's involved. It's a mess. If there's any way you'd consider consulting for a transition or recovery, I'd personally make sure you're compensated right. Just give me a number. Anything. No hard feelings. Hope you're doing all right." I stared at that message for a good minute. Then I archived it. No reply. No revenge. Just peace. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't angry. I wasn't gloating. Because the truth is, there's no satisfaction in watching something fall apart if it had to burn to prove your value. I don't want to be needed in disaster. I want to be trusted before it. And at Selhurst I was. There's a strange kind of silence that follows a storm, not peace exactly, more like absence. Like the quiet hum after an overloaded circuit finally breaks. That's what it felt like, watching Risner from a distance. No more urgent texts. No late-night calls. No fire alarms in my inbox. Just nothing. And it hit me one morning, as I was walking into Selhurst's downtown Chicago office, that for the first time in years, I wasn't bracing for something to go wrong. At Risner, I'd wake up every day with mental checklists: who might have disabled an alert, which shipment might hit a customs queue during a political flare-up, whether the East Coast route might need to reroute due to a tech glitch or an unpatched update. I lived with my hand on the brake. Because no one else would. But Selhurst was different. And not because they were perfect, far from it. It was because they wanted the brakes. On my second week, Janelle and I sat in on a review of the new clearance modeling engine I'd helped design. It was raw basic, just a sandbox build. But it asked the right questions. How do we isolate biometric anomalies? What happens when the customs data feed stalls mid-transmission? What if there's a regional power outage during an auto-certification scan? I posed all of it. And no one rolled their eyes. No one said, "You worry too much." Instead, Janelle leaned forward and said, "Good. Let's build for that." That was when I realized something fundamental. Something I wish I'd known years ago. Being indispensable is not the same as being respected. At Risner, I was indispensable. But I was alone. I had built systems so robust, so quietly effective, that no one saw them anymore. They only saw the time they thought I was wasting. They didn't see the disasters I quietly prevented. But here I wasn't a gatekeeper. I was part of the blueprint. A few days later, I got lunch with an old friend from the logistics world, Elijah, a former risk officer now working with a government contractor. He looked at me across the table and said, "You look lighter." I laughed. "I sleep now." He raised an eyebrow. "Risner still a dumpster fire?" I shrugged. "They'll figure it out. Or they won't." He leaned in. "You ever think about going back?" I shook my head immediately. "No. And not because I'm angry. I don't want to be the guy they only listen to after the crash." Later that week, I got another email from someone at Risner. Not management. Someone in the trenches. A guy named Drew, mid-level analyst who'd always kept his head down. Subject: I should have said this sooner. Hey Levi. You probably don't remember me. I just wanted to say, I learned more reading your audit trail notes than I did in 2 years of corporate training. You kept this place running long after the leadership stopped noticing. When it all broke, I realized how much I took that for granted. We all did. I hope you're somewhere better. You deserve it. I read that email twice. Maybe 3 times. Then I replied, I remember you. Take that lesson with you to your next job. Never make the quiet systems invisible. They're the only ones that hold under pressure. And that was it. Not vengeance. Not triumph. Just the quiet dignity of being somewhere that valued prevention more than recovery. Somewhere that didn't confuse urgency with leadership. I wasn't the system anymore. And honestly, that's exactly how I wanted it. Some stories end in flames. Mine ended with a whiteboard and a cup of strong coffee. It was early, barely 7 a.m., and I was the first one in. Old habit. One I never shook. I liked the silence before a day began. It felt clean, honest. The new project at Selhurst was ambitious, a customs optimization engine built not around speed at all costs, but around resilience. We weren't chasing margins. We were building infrastructure that bends without breaking. And for the first time, I wasn't just the guy who came in to fix what others broke. I was part of what was being built from the ground up. I stood there, marker in hand, sketching out a redundancy grid when Janelle walked in. She paused, glanced at the whiteboard, and smiled. You never stop thinking about how it might break, do you? Nope, I said, capping the marker. But now I get to build it knowing someone cares that it doesn't. She nodded. That's why I hired you. Simple words. No pomp. No performance. But they landed heavier than every performance review I ever got at Risner. That weekend, I took a walk through Lincoln Park. Not because I had to clear my head, but because I had space in it again. I didn't realize how much of my life had been eaten up by dread. The dread of being questioned. The dread of being undervalued. The dread of knowing deep down that the better I was at preventing disaster, the less people saw me at all. But that wasn't my weight to carry anymore. Some people have to lose everything to realize what they had. Others need to be cut loose to find where they belong. Me? I had to be told I was too careful to realize that was my greatest strength. About a month after I left, I got one last piece of mail forwarded from my old Risner address. A thick envelope. Inside, a final paycheck stub, a generic HR form, and a handwritten note on company letterhead. It wasn't signed. No name. Just one line written in a sharp, tense scrawl. You were right. We moved too fast. I folded the note and tossed it in the trash. Not because I was bitter, but because I already had everything I needed. Now, I work with people who don't flinch when you say the word risk. They listen. They plan. They don't confuse caution with cowardice. Every system I design now has layers. Yes, it slows things down. But it keeps things standing. And sometimes, that's the only difference between chaos and continuity. That's the way things should be. I'm Levi Rourke. I was let go for being too careful. And now, because of that, I'm exactly where I belong.